You'll remember this was hours ago now in our coverage, but I'm going to take you back to this image because I told you there was one person in Washington that if we could just get a hold of that one person, we might get a window into what the conversation was like inside the motorcade with Joe Biden and Donald Trump on the way up to the Capitol, because we watched as she got into the motorcade too. Senator Amy Klobuchar, the Democrat from Minnesota. And look at our booking team. Senator Klobuchar, great to have you with us here. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks, David. Great to be on. We've just ended our day of ceremonies with a review of the troop, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, you did extraordinary work, Senator, and we've been talking about this on our air, that this was something that I think the country as a whole craved, to see both parties come together, and we know you led that effort as a chair of the inaugural committee, and we can't imagine what the last 24 hours must have been like for you as you tried to rejigger a lot of the planning. But we're looking at these images right now, Senator Klobuchar, of you inside the motorcade with Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and I know, oh, there's the laughter. So tell me, what was it like?
Well, first of all, I think you should know that there were a few of us in the White House ahead, and President Biden and Vice President Harris and Jill and Doug couldn't have been more gracious. We fell behind a little in the schedule simply because everyone was talking for quite a bit. And when we got into that car, I'm not going to reveal every detail except to say maybe we did discuss football just a little bit and some of the games yesterday. And we also talked about the now president's upcoming trip to Los Angeles, and I talked to him privately about that with the Olympics coming and how important that is, and of course mentioned the firefighters in my speech.
And we watched the moment when President Biden, the outgoing president, welcomed the incoming President Donald Trump to the White House. Senator Klobuchar, this was something that wasn't afforded to former President Joe Biden 4 years ago, and that the country saw again this time. Donald Trump even said a few weeks ago when he visited the Oval Office that this was something he did talk to then President Biden about, how important that moment is after all, and that he was looking forward to that moment returning as well. How important do you think it is as a nation as we try to move forward from some of these polarizing times?
Despite what happened last time, I think you could see that Joe Biden decided he's taken the higher ground. He was more than gracious. The two of them, as you know, had worked together on the ceasefire and their staffs. And so, out of this, I hope will become some relationship going forward. I think that President Biden deserves that, and I also appreciated that the entire day we spent with the Trumps, and I think that the country was able to see. I certainly didn't agree with everything he said in his speech. There's going to be a lot of disagreements going forward, but there has to be a way where we can cross the river our divides and find some common ground when we can. That doesn't mean, as a Democrat, that I'm not going to stand our ground when I must. I'm going to do that. However, when we can find common ground, especially in some of the things you were just talking about costs and from everything from health care to housing to child care, that if there is a way to find common ground, we're going to do that.
You mentioned the inaugural address inside the rotunda. It was a far more intimate setting. One of the things that we talked about on air here before you could join us in the conversation at length earlier was as the president delivered his inaugural address, because of the room and the way you moved it indoors, it was as though in almost every shot, right over his shoulder, was the outgoing president, Joe Biden, and the outgoing Vice President Kamala Harris listening to that address. So the country watched that. And what did you make? And did you hear enough about unity? We were also wondering if he would do the customary, thank you for your service after so long in front of the public eye. We didn't hear too much of that. What did you make about that?
Well, he did mention unity, but again, he focused on a lot of what he'd ran on, and, that is his right. But I do think the fact that President Biden was there, Vice President Harris were there, so respectful, President Obama, President Clinton, Hillary Clinton, we had everyone from the Bushes to Vice President Quayle. And so I think one of the things, as you talked about that room, that I most noticed is because of the change, I wanted to make the point that we have to remember that our power in the room comes not from the people in there, but from the people that put us in there, and the teachers, the construction workers, the troops defending our freedoms, the firefighters in Los Angeles. So I just believe our strength and grit have to match theirs when it comes to democracy. And if you believe that in your heart, and which I hope this incoming administration is going to take to heart. When I remember the words of some of the religious leaders that spoke about Lincoln's words about malice toward none, charity for all. You got to take that to heart then and act on it. So that is going to be part of our job. There's a reason we have the inauguration at the Capitol. We could have it in a presidential palace or some kind of gilded executive office building. And we make the point in our country traditionally that this is three branches of government and that we have got checks and balances. And that is something that, I hope that this new incoming administration will respect.
Well, I know your time is very valuable. I do want to ask you a quick question on the news that's been made today, and there's been a lot of it already, and then I'll let you go. But I wanted to start with the news that broke this morning, the 11th hour pardons from the outgoing president, President Biden, pardons for Liz Cheney, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mark Milley, among them, the pardons for members of Joe Biden's own family. He said none of these individuals did anything wrong, though he was concerned about what the future might bring. And on the other hand, Senator Klobuchar, we also have reporting from our ABC team here that among the executive actions, orders from President Trump here this afternoon will be a sweeping action of sorts for many, if not all, of those who were prosecuted involving the January 6th attack on the Capitol. And I'm curious what your reaction is to that move. And again, we haven't seen it yet, but what you would make of that move from President Trump and how you reacted to former President Biden's move this morning.
Okay, that's called a lot of questions. So first of all, on the pardon front, I'm someone that has long advocated for pardon reform. I would like to see some kind of a commission set up where they review cases on a case-by-case basis. I said this when President Biden made his pardons. My concern about these, I'm talking about the past ones. And I know that a number of the people that were involved in the January 6th investigation, which I think is a righteous investigation, that they were concerned. That being said, I hope that there isn't some, again, large-scale pardoning. We've got pardoning on both sides now, just because those January 6th insurrectionists actually hurt people. People were hurt. There were officers we had officers that committed suicide later. We had many that were severely hurt. And so, I just hope that what they're not doing is a full-scale pardon. If they are going to do this, and I wouldn't do it, as I said, I would have both sides here. I would have done this very differently. But I would hope they would look at each case carefully before they do something like that.
Senator Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota. Senator Klobuchar, we applaud your efforts today to bring back some bipartisan norms, some moments of democracy.
We had a nice lunch. I sat between the president and the vice president. Lots to talk about, a lot of people there, and lots to do as we go forward. So thank you.
We saw President Trump smiling there, very warm with you after your moments at the podium. And so thank you for your work today in bringing the country together. Senator Klobuchar from Minnesota.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Always good to have Senator Klobuchar, and she's always willing to answer the questions, even if there are more wrapped up into one than perhaps I led on to.